Tycoon husband caught in Paris with Mistress. Pregnant wife uncovers the truth. Another successful quarter. Ethan says into the phone, his voice confident and proud. But as he looks at Clara, something flickers across his face. Is it guilt? Love? Something else entirely? Clara calls out to him, her voice warm but carrying a hint of exhaustion. Ethan, darling, can you help me with these pregnancy pillows? My back is killing me. He hesitates for a moment too long before responding. Of course, love, just finishing up this call. But instead of ending it, he continues discussing merger details while Clara struggles alone, trying to get comfortable on the couch. Their housekeeper, Maria, notices Clara's discomfort and rushes to help. Mrs. Park, let me assist you. Mr. Park has been so busy lately. Clara forces a smile, but her eyes betray her sadness. It's fine, Maria. He's building our future, right? She says this lightly, but her hand trembles slightly as she reaches for her glass of water. Later that night, as they lie in bed, Ethan finally puts down his phone. Clara turns to him, her voice barely above a whisper. Do you remember when we used to watch sunsets together every evening? Before all this. Ethan kisses her forehead, his touch lingering perhaps a moment too long. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Things will settle down after the baby arrives. I promise. But as Clara falls asleep beside him, Ethan stares at the ceiling, his mind clearly elsewhere. The camera zooms in on his troubled expression as we hear the faint vibration of an incoming text message on his phone. A notification he quickly silences. Can you feel the tension building? This seemingly perfect couple is already drifting apart, though neither wants to admit it yet. Clara's unconditional love battles against growing doubts, while Ethan's ambition wars with his conscience. Their California dream home hides cracks that are beginning to show, even if only to the most observant eyes. The sun dips low over Malibu, painting the sky in streaks of gold and crimson. The Park Estate, a sprawling modern mansion perched on a cliff overlooking the Pacific, is bathed in warm, fading light. Inside, Ethan stands on his balcony, one hand gripping the railing as he talks into his phone. His voice is smooth and commanding, the tone of someone who has spent years mastering control. But there's an edge to it tonight. Yes, finalize the merger documents by Friday, Ethan says sharply, his eyes flickering toward the living room where Clara sits. And make sure the board knows we're ahead of schedule. Clara hears fragments of the conversation from her spot on the couch. She shifts uncomfortably, trying to find relief for her aching back. Her swollen belly makes even simple movements feel monumental these days. She calls out softly, Ethan, can you help me with this pillow? Please. For a moment, there's silence. Ethan pauses mid-sentence, glancing at her over his shoulder. He doesn't answer immediately, instead finishing his thought to his business partner. I'll send you the revised projections tonight. Only then does he turn fully toward her, forcing a smile that doesn't quite reach his eyes. Of course, love, just wrapping up here. But he doesn't move. Instead, he paces along the balcony, scrolling through emails on his phone while Clara watches him. Her smile falters slightly, though she tries to hide it. She reaches for the pregnancy pillow beside her, struggling to adjust it without disturbing the baby monitor on the coffee table. Their housekeeper, Maria, enters quietly with a tray of tea. Seeing Clara's discomfort, she sets the tray down and rushes to assist. Mrs. Park, let me help you. You shouldn't be straining like this. Clara gives her a grateful look, though her voice carries a note of resignation. Thank you, Maria. It's just, everything feels so heavy lately. She glances toward Ethan, who is now leaning against the balcony railing, still absorbed in his call. Not just physically. Maria hesitates before replying gently. Mr. Park works hard for your family, Mrs. Park. He loves you both very much. Clara nods slowly, but her expression suggests she's not entirely convinced. I know, she murmurs almost to herself, or at least, I think I do. As evening falls, the golden light softens into shadow. Ethan finally ends his call and steps inside, sliding the glass door shut behind him. He approaches Clara cautiously, as if sensing her mood. "Better?" he asks, gesturing toward the pillows now arranged around her. She forces a brighter smile this time, determined not to let her doubts show. "Much better, thank you." Then, after a beat, she adds lightly, "Do you remember when we used to watch sunsets together every evening? Before all this?" She gestures vaguely at her belly, then at the stacks of work papers scattered across the room. Ethan kneels beside her, taking her hand in his. For a moment, they lock eyes, and something passes between them. Regret? Longing? Whatever it is, it vanishes quickly as Ethan looks away. "I miss those days too, sweetheart. But you know how important this next phase is. For us, for the baby." Once things settle down, Clara interrupts him softly, her voice tinged with sadness. "That's what you always say, Ethan. Once things settle down. But will they ever really?" Her words hang in the air, heavier than either of them intended. Ethan opens his mouth to respond, but no sound comes out. Instead, he kisses her forehead, lingering just long enough to avoid meeting her gaze. "Soon," he promises finally, though his voice lacks conviction. "Everything will be fine soon." Later that night, as they lie in bed, the weight of unspoken truths presses down on them. Clara faces away from Ethan, pretending to sleep, though her breathing betrays her wakefulness. Ethan stares at the ceiling, his mind racing. The faint vibration of his phone breaks the silence. A text message lights up the screen, illuminating his face briefly. He silences it quickly, but not before Clara stirs. Without turning to face him, she whispers, "Who was that?" Ethan freezes for a fraction of a second too long. "Just work," he replies, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. "Go back to sleep, love." Clara closes her eyes tightly, fighting back tears. She wants to believe him. She needs to believe him. But deep down, doubt gnaws at her heart like waves eroding a cliffside. The same waves that crash against the shore below their home, relentless and unforgiving. Ethan stands in front of the mirror in his walk-in closet, adjusting his tie. His reflection shows a man who looks composed on the surface but whose eyes betray an inner turmoil. He glances at his phone resting on the dresser. It buzzes again, and he hesitates before picking it up. The screen lights up with a message from Isabelle. "Last night was magical, mon amour. When will I see you again?" His jaw tightens as he quickly deletes the message, shoving the phone into his pocket. He exhales sharply, running a hand through his hair. Just then, Clara enters the room, already dressed for her prenatal yoga class. She freezes when she sees him standing there, his expression unreadable. "Good morning," she says softly, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "Are you heading out early?" Ethan turns to face her, forcing a smile that doesn't quite meet his eyes. "Yeah, just a quick trip to Paris for some meetings. It shouldn't take long." Clara's heart skips a beat. Paris? Again? This is the third time this year he's mentioned Paris under the guise of business. Her fingers tighten around the strap of her yoga mat, but she keeps her tone light. "Paris sounds lovely. Wish I could go with you." He chuckles nervously, avoiding her gaze as he grabs his briefcase. "Maybe next time, sweetheart. You know how crazy things get over there." She nods slowly, trying to mask the unease creeping into her chest. "Of course. Safe travels, Ethan." As he leans down to kiss her goodbye, she catches a faint whiff of something unfamiliar, a trace of perfume that isn't hers. For a split second, her breath hitches, but she forces herself to stay calm. "Don't work too hard," she murmurs, pulling away slightly sooner than usual. Once the door clicks shut behind him, Clara sinks onto the edge of their bed, her mind racing. That scent, those late-night texts, the way he always seems distracted lately. Could it really be what she fears most? Later that evening, Clara sits alone in the living room, scrolling absent-mindedly through social media on her tablet. A notification pops up, a friend request from someone named Isabelle Duval. The profile picture shows a striking woman with piercing green eyes and flowing auburn hair. Something about her feels unsettlingly familiar. Curiosity gets the better of Clara, and she accepts the request. As she scrolls through Isabelle's photos, her blood runs cold. There's one image in particular that stops her heart. A candid shot of Ethan laughing with Isabelle at a cafe in Paris. They look impossibly close, their body language speaking volumes even without words. Her hands tremble as she zooms in on the photo, tears welling up in her eyes. How could he, the man she loves, the father of her unborn child, betraying her like this? Maria enters the room, carrying a tray of tea. Seeing Clara's pale face and tear-filled eyes, she sets the tray down immediately. "Mrs. Park, what's wrong?" Clara shakes her head, unable to speak. Instead, she hands Maria the tablet, her finger trembling as it points to the incriminating photo. Maria gasps, covering her mouth with her hand. "Oh my God! I don't understand," Clara whispers brokenly, clutching her belly as if seeking comfort from the life growing inside her. "How could he do this to us? To our baby?" Maria kneels beside her, gripping her hand tightly. "You are strong, Mrs. Park. Stronger than you think. Whatever happens, we'll figure it out together." But Clara barely hears her. All she can think about is the man she thought she knew, the man she loved so deeply, and the stranger he's become. Her mind flashes back to their wedding day, the vows they exchanged, the promises they made. Did any of it mean anything to him? Meanwhile, thousands of miles away in Paris, Ethan steps out of a taxi and onto the cobblestone streets of Montmartre. Isabelle waits for him outside a charming little bistro, her lips curving into a seductive smile as she spots him approaching. "You're late," she teases, wrapping her arms around his neck. Her French accent drips like honey, intoxicating and dangerous all at once. "Sorry," Ethan mutters, though he doesn't sound particularly apologetic. "Traffic was worse than I expected." Isabelle tilts her head, studying him closely. "Something's bothering you. What is it?" He sighs, running a hand through his hair. "It's nothing, just work stress." She raises an eyebrow skeptically. "Or is it your wife?" The question hangs between them, sharp and cutting. Ethan shifts uncomfortably, avoiding her gaze. "Don't start, Isabelle. You know how complicated this is." She smirks, tracing a finger along his jawline. "Complicated? Or cowardly? You promised me you'd leave her after the baby is born. Was that another lie?" Ethan pulls away abruptly, his frustration bubbling to the surface. "You don't understand what I'm dealing with, Clara. She's not like other women. She deserves better than you." Isabelle cuts him off sharply, her voice laced with venom. "Face it, Ethan. You're already here with me, so stop pretending you care about her feelings." Her words hit him like a punch to the gut, leaving him speechless. For a moment, guilt flickers across his face, but it's quickly replaced by anger. Anger at himself, at Isabelle, at the mess he's created. "Let's just drop it," he mutters finally, gesturing toward the bistro. "I didn't come here to argue." Isabelle watches him walk ahead, her expression unreadable. She knows she has him right where she wants him, caught between two worlds, unable to fully commit to either, and she has no intention of letting go. Back in California, Clara stares out the window at the endless expanse of ocean stretching beyond the horizon. Her mind races with questions she doesn't have answers to. Should she confront Ethan directly, or wait until he returns, hoping for some kind of explanation? Her phone buzzes on the table beside her, startling her out of her thoughts. It's a text from Noah, the young lawyer who's been helping her with some legal matters related to their property. "Hey Clara, just checking in. How are you holding up?" She hesitates before responding, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. Part of her wants to tell him everything, to pour out her heart and let someone else share the weight of her pain. But another part of her is afraid of appearing weak, of exposing the cracks in her seemingly perfect life. Finally, she types a simple reply, "I'm okay, just tired." Noah responds almost instantly, "You don't have to pretend with me, Clara. If you need to talk, I'm here." Tears well up in her eyes again, but this time they feel different. Less lonely, less hopeless. Maybe she doesn't have to face this storm alone after all. As the sun sets over Malibu, casting long shadows across the park estate, Clara makes a silent vow to herself. Whatever happens next, she won't let Ethan or anyone else define her worth. She may not know what the future holds, but one thing is certain. She will fight for herself and for the tiny life growing inside her. The camera pans out, capturing the vastness of the ocean and the fragility of the world within the walls of the park home. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbles, a promise of storms yet to come. Instead, she throws herself into distractions. Prenatal yoga classes, organizing the nursery, and meeting with Noah to finalize paperwork for their property. But no matter how busy she keeps herself, the image of Ethan and Isabelle lingers in her mind, haunting her every thought. One afternoon, as Clara sits across from Noah at a quiet cafe overlooking the Pacific Coast Highway, she struggles to focus on their conversation. Her hands tremble slightly as she stirs her chamomile tea, the spoon clinking against the porcelain cup. Noah notices immediately, his brow furrowing with concern. "You seem distant," he says softly, leaning forward. "Is everything okay?" Clara forces a smile, though it doesn't reach her eyes. "I'm fine. Just tired, like I said before." Noah studies her for a moment, his gaze piercing yet gentle. "You don't have to shield yourself from me, Clara. Whatever you're going through, you can trust me." Her defenses crack just enough for her to exhale sharply, her shoulders slumping under the weight of unspoken words. For a fleeting second, she considers telling him everything, about the photo, about Ethan, about the betrayal that feels like a knife twisting in her chest. But fear holds her back. Fear of judgment, of pity, of losing the fragile sense of control she's clinging to. "I found something," she admits finally, her voice barely above a whisper. She glances around the cafe to ensure no one is listening before continuing. "Something that makes me question everything." Noah leans closer, his expression softening further. "What did you find?" Clara hesitates, tears welling up in her eyes. She pulls out her phone and scrolls to the photo of Ethan and Isabelle, sliding it across the table toward him. Noah picks it up, his jaw tightening as he studies the image. "Who is she?" he asks quietly, his voice steady despite the anger simmering beneath the surface. "I don't know her name," Clara lies, unable to bring herself to say Isabelle's name aloud. "But she's someone he met in Paris, someone he lied about." Noah sets the phone down carefully, his eyes locking onto hers. "Clara, this isn't just a coincidence or a misunderstanding. This is deliberate. He's hiding something big." She nods, tears spilling over now, tracing silent paths down her cheeks. "I wanted to believe it was innocent, a work colleague, maybe. But the way they look at each other." Her voice breaks, and she buries her face in her hands. "How could he do this to us? To our baby?" Noah reaches across the table, placing a reassuring hand over hers. "You deserve so much better than this, Clara. Don't let him make you doubt your worth." His words strike a chord deep within her, reigniting a spark of strength she thought had been extinguished. She wipes her tears away, her resolve hardening. "I won't confront him yet," she says firmly, surprising even herself. "Not until I have proof. Until I know exactly what I'm dealing with." Noah nods approvingly. "That's smart. Gather all the information you can before making any decisions. And remember, you're not alone in this. I'm here if you need me." For the first time in days, Clara feels a flicker of hope. It's small, fragile, but it's there. She gives Noah a grateful smile, squeezing his hand briefly before pulling away. "Thank you," she murmurs. "I don't know what I'd do without someone like you right now." Later that evening, Clara returns home to an empty house. Ethan hasn't called to say when he'll be back, and part of her wonders if he's still in Paris with Isabelle. The thought sends a fresh wave of nausea crashing over her, but she pushes it aside. She has work to do. She heads straight to Ethan's study, her heart pounding as she closes the door behind her. The room smells faintly of his cologne, a scent that once comforted her but now fills her with dread. She begins rifling through his desk drawers, searching for anything that might confirm her suspicions. Receipts, hotel bills, anything. Her fingers brush against something tucked inside a folder labeled Personal Documents. She pulls it out, a crumpled receipt from a luxury hotel in Paris dated just days ago. Beneath it is a handwritten note scrawled hastily on hotel stationery. Mon cher Ethan, je t'attends toujours. Avec tout mon amour, Isabelle. Clara's breath catches in her throat. The evidence is undeniable now. Ethan isn't just having an affair. He's deeply entangled with this woman. Betrayal crashes over her like a tidal wave, threatening to drown her. But instead of crumbling, she feels something else rising within her. Rage. She snaps a photo of the receipt and the note with her phone, tucking them back into the folder exactly as she found them. As she leaves the study, her steps are steadier, more purposeful. She knows what she needs to do next. The following day, Clara visits Maria, who has become both confidant and ally in these dark times. They sit together in Maria's cozy kitchen, the smell of freshly baked bread filling the air. Clara places her phone on the table, showing Maria the photo of the receipt and the note. "This is proof," Clara says, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and determination. "Proof that he's lying to me, to us." Maria shakes her head sadly, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "What will you do now, Mrs. Park?" "I'm not sure," Clara admits, "but I won't let him manipulate me anymore. If he thinks he can keep living two lives, one with me and one with her, he's wrong." Maria nods slowly, reaching out to squeeze Clara's hand. "You are stronger than you realize. Remember that." As Clara leaves Maria's house, the sun sets low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the driveway. She climbs into her car, gripping the steering wheel tightly as she stares ahead. Her mind races with possibilities, each one more daunting than the last. Should she confront Ethan directly? Hire a private investigator? File for separation? Before she can decide, her phone buzzes in the passenger seat. It's a text from Ethan. "Landing tomorrow morning. Can't wait to see you and the baby. Love you." Her stomach churns as she reads the message. How dare he pretend everything is fine? How dare he act like nothing has changed? She types a reply, her fingers shaking with fury. "See you tomorrow. We need to talk." The next morning, Ethan arrives home to find Clara waiting for him in the living room. She stands by the window, her arms crossed protectively over her belly. Her expression is calm but unreadable, masking the storm brewing inside her. "Welcome back," she says coolly, turning to face him as he enters. "How was Paris?" Ethan freezes mid-step, sensing the tension in her tone. "It was productive," he replies cautiously. "Why? What's wrong?" Clara steps closer, holding up her phone so he can see the photo of the receipt and the note. Ethan's face drains of color as recognition dawns. "Care to explain this?" she demands, her voice steady despite the turmoil raging within her. Ethan stammers, panic flashing in his eyes. "Clara, No," she cuts him off sharply. "Don't lie to me again." "Who is she, Ethan? And don't you dare tell me it's nothing." He sinks onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. "I'm sorry," he whispers brokenly. "I never meant to hurt you." "But you did," Clara fires back, tears streaming down her face. "You've been lying to me for months. Months, while I've been here, carrying your child, trusting you, loving you." Ethan looks up at her, guilt written all over his face. "I don't expect you to forgive me, but please, give me a chance to make things right." Clara shakes her head, her resolve unshakable. "It's too late for that. You made your choice, Ethan. Now I'm making mine." As she walks away, leaving him sitting there in stunned silence, the camera pans out to capture the vast emptiness of the room. The foundation of their marriage has crumbled, and there's no going back. Ethan tries to reach out to Clara multiple times, but she avoids him, retreating further into herself as she grapples with the enormity of what she's discovered. One evening, as the sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. Clara sits alone on the balcony overlooking the ocean. Her phone buzzes persistently on the table beside her. Texts from Ethan begging for forgiveness, but she ignores them. Instead, she stares at the waves crashing against the rocks below, their rhythm both soothing and relentless, much like the storm raging inside her. Her thoughts are interrupted by a soft knock on the sliding glass door. She turns to see Noah standing there, his silhouette framed by the warm glow of the living room lights behind him. He holds up a paper bag in one hand, offering a tentative smile. "I brought dinner," he says gently. "Thought you might need a break from everything." Clara hesitates before nodding, gesturing for him to join her. As he steps onto the balcony, the cool ocean breeze ruffles his hair, and he pulls a chair close to hers. For a moment, they sit in companionable silence, listening to the sound of the waves. "Thank you," Clara finally says, her voice barely audible over the wind. "I haven't had much of an appetite lately." Noah glances at her, his expression filled with concern. "You can't keep going like this, Clara. You're carrying a baby. You need to take care of yourself." She exhales sharply, rubbing her temples as if trying to ward off an impending headache. "I know. It's just hard to focus on anything else when your whole world feels like it's falling apart." Noah leans forward, his gaze intense yet kind. "It's okay to feel lost right now, but you don't have to face this alone. Let me help you. Let someone help you." Tears well up in Clara's eyes, spilling over before she can stop them. "Why does it hurt so much?" she whispers, her voice breaking. "Even though I knew something was wrong, even though I saw the proof, why does it still feel like my heart is being ripped out?" Noah doesn't answer immediately. Instead, he reaches out, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Because love isn't logical," he says softly, "and betrayal cuts deeper than we ever expected to. But that pain doesn't define you, Clara. How you choose to move forward, that's what matters." Clara looks at him, her eyes searching his face for answers she knows he can't provide. Yet there's something comforting about his presence, something steady and unwavering. In that moment, she realizes how isolated she's felt these past few weeks, and how much she craves connection, even if it's just with one person. "You must think I'm pathetic," she mutters, wiping her tears away with the back of her hand. "Crying over a man who doesn't deserve my tears." "No," Noah replies firmly, his voice laced with conviction. "I think you're human, and I think you've been through more than anyone should have to endure. What Ethan did, it's not a reflection of your worth, Clara. If anything, it shows how little he deserved you in the first place." His words strike a chord deep within her, reigniting a flicker of strength she thought had been extinguished. She takes a shaky breath, straightening her posture slightly. "What do I do now?" she asks, her voice tinged with desperation. "How do I start over when everything feels so broken?" Noah smiles faintly, his eyes softening. "One step at a time. Start by focusing on you and the baby. Everything else will fall into place eventually." Later that night, after Noah leaves, Clara lies awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. The house is eerily quiet, save for the distant crash of waves against the shore. Her mind races with possibilities, each one more daunting than the last. Divorce? Legal separation? Moving out? The thought of leaving the life she built with Ethan feels overwhelming, but staying feels impossible. Her phone buzzes again on the nightstand, pulling her from her thoughts. It's another text from Ethan. "Please, Clara, we need to talk. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this." Her fingers hover over the keyboard as she debates how to respond. Finally, she types, "There's nothing left to fix, Ethan. Not anymore." She hits send before she can second-guess herself, then sets the phone aside. A weight lifts off her chest, however slight, as she realizes she's taking control of her life for the first time in months. The next morning, Clara wakes early, determined to reclaim some semblance of normalcy. She dresses in comfortable clothes and heads to the local farmer's market, a place she used to frequent before everything unraveled. The vibrant colors and lively chatter of vendors and shoppers provide a small reprieve from the heaviness weighing on her heart. As she browses the stalls, she's approached by an elderly woman selling handmade jewelry. The woman smiles warmly, holding up a delicate silver necklace adorned with a tiny pendant shaped like a wave. "This piece reminds me of you," the woman says, her voice gentle, strong yet graceful, like the ocean. Clara blinks in surprise, touched by the sentiment. She buys the necklace without hesitation, slipping it around her neck as she walks away. The simple act of treating herself feels empowering, a reminder that she deserves beauty and joy, even in the midst of chaos. That afternoon, Clara meets with Maria to discuss her plans. They sit together in the kitchen, sipping herbal tea as Clara outlines her next steps. "I've decided to stay here for now," Clara explains, her voice steadier than it has been in weeks. "But I'm going to start looking for a place of my own. Somewhere new, somewhere fresh." Maria nods approvingly, her eyes shining with pride. "You're doing the right thing, Mrs. Park, for you and the baby." Clara smiles faintly, placing a protective hand on her belly. "It won't be easy, but I owe it to myself and to this little one to try." As they talk, Clara's phone buzzes again. This time, it's a text from Noah. "Thinking of you. Remember, you're stronger than you think." She reads the message twice, a warmth spreading through her chest despite everything. For the first time in what feels like forever, she allows herself to imagine a future beyond Ethan. A future where she's free to build a life on her own terms. But as the sun sets over Malibu, casting long shadows across the estate, Clara can't shake the feeling that the hardest battles are yet to come. Ethan isn't the type to let go easily, and she knows he'll fight to win her back, or at least salvage his reputation. And then there's Isabelle, whose presence looms like a shadow over everything. Clara stands on the balcony once more, the silver necklace catching the fading light. She places a hand over her belly, whispering softly to the life growing inside her. "We'll get through this," she murmurs, her voice trembling but resolute. Together, the camera pans out, capturing the vastness of the ocean stretching beyond the horizon. The waves crash relentlessly against the shore, mirroring the turbulence within Clara's heart. Whatever happens next, one thing is certain. She's ready to face it head-on. She lies in bed for a moment, staring at the ceiling as memories flood her mind. Laughter-filled road trips along the Pacific Coast Highway, quiet evenings spent watching sunsets together, Ethan's vows echoing in her ears. "I promise to love and cherish you, for better or worse." Her chest tightens painfully at the thought of those broken promises. She sits up slowly, placing a hand on her belly as if drawing strength from the life growing inside her. Today is not a day for dwelling on the past. Today is about moving forward. Clara gets dressed and heads downstairs, where Maria is already preparing breakfast. The housekeeper looks up as Clara enters the kitchen, offering a warm smile. "Good morning, Mrs. Park. Feeling any better?" Clara nods faintly, though her eyes betray lingering sadness. "I'm trying," she says softly, taking a seat at the counter. "It's just hard not to think about how much has changed." Maria sets a plate of scrambled eggs and toast in front of her, her expression thoughtful. "Do you want to talk about it? Sometimes saying things out loud helps." Clara hesitates, picking at her food with a fork. Then, after a long pause, she begins to speak, not just about the betrayal, but about the early days of her relationship with Ethan. Her voice trembles as she recounts their first meeting, a chance encounter at an art gallery opening in downtown Los Angeles. "He was so charming," Clara recalls, a bittersweet smile tugging at her lips. "He walked right up to me and said, 'You look like someone who appreciates beauty.' I laughed it off at first. I thought he was just another smooth-talking businessman. But then he started asking me questions about the paintings, really listening to what I had to say. It wasn't just charm. It felt genuine." Maria listens intently, nodding encouragingly. "And that's when you knew?" Clara shakes her head, her gaze distant. "Not immediately. Took time. We went on dates, talked for hours about everything under the sun. He made me feel seen, Maria, like no one else ever had. And when he proposed, standing on this very balcony with the ocean stretching out behind him. I truly believed we'd have forever. Her voice cracks on the last word, and she quickly wipes away a tear before it can fall. Maria reaches across the counter, placing a comforting hand over hers. You did nothing wrong, Mrs. Park. Love isn't something you can control. It either grows or it fades. What Ethan did, that's on him, not you. Clara exhales shakily, clutching her necklace, the tiny wave pendant catching the dim light filtering through the rain-speckled windows. I keep wondering if I missed the signs, she admits quietly. If I could have done something differently. No, Maria says firmly, cutting her off. Don't let him make you doubt yourself. People cheat because they're unhappy, not because their partner failed them. You gave Ethan everything. He's the one who threw it away. The words settle over Clara like a weight lifting slightly. She takes a deep breath, forcing herself to focus on the present rather than the ghosts of the past. Thank you, she murmurs, giving Maria's hand a grateful squeeze. I needed to hear that. Later that afternoon, Clara decides to visit the art gallery where she and Ethan first met. It's a place she hasn't been to in years, but something draws her there now. A need to reconnect with the version of herself who fell in love with him all those years ago. As she steps inside, the familiar scent of oil paints and polished wood envelopes her. The gallery is quieter than she remembers, the soft hum of classical music playing in the background. She wanders through the aisles, pausing in front of a painting that catches her eye. A swirling abstract piece dominated by shades of blue and gold. This one always stood out to me, a voice says behind her, startling her. She turns to see Noah standing there, his hands tucked into the pockets of his leather jacket. He smiles sheepishly, gesturing toward the painting. I hope you don't mind. I saw your car outside and figured I'd come in to say hi. Clara shakes her head, managing a small smile. No, it's fine. Actually, this was the first painting Ethan and I bonded over. Noah studies the artwork, tilting his head thoughtfully. It's beautiful, kind of chaotic, but also hopeful, somehow. Clara nods, her throat tightening unexpectedly. That's exactly how I felt back then. Chaotic, but hopeful. They stand in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken emotions hanging between them. Finally, Noah breaks the quiet. How are you holding up? Really? Clara shrugs, avoiding his gaze as she traces the edge of the painting frame with her fingers. Some days are better than others. Today's complicated. Noah steps closer, his presence grounding her. Complicated how? She sighs, turning to face him fully. I came here hoping to remember why I fell in love with him, to understand what went wrong. But all I can think about is how different we are now, how much he's changed. And you? Noah asks gently. How have you changed? Clara blinks, caught off guard by the question. Me? Yes. He presses, his tone earnest. People grow apart for a reason, Clara. Maybe it's not just him. It's both of you. Maybe the person you were when you met Ethan isn't the same person you are today. His words hit her like a revelation, stirring something deep within her. She thinks about the woman she used to be, carefree, optimistic, eager to please. And then she thinks about who she's become, resilient, cautious, determined to protect herself and her child. I don't know who I am anymore, she admits softly, tears welling up in her eyes. But I do know I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago. Noah places a reassuring hand on her shoulder, his touch light yet steady. That's not a bad thing, Clara. Growth isn't easy, but it's necessary. And maybe this pain is part of becoming the person you're meant to be. Clara looks up at him, her heart swelling with gratitude, and something else she can't quite name. For the first time in weeks, she feels a flicker of hope. Not for reconciliation with Ethan, but for herself. For the possibility of finding happiness again, even if it looks nothing like what she imagined. Thank you, she whispers, her voice thick with emotion, for being here, for understanding. Noah smiles, his eyes softening. Always, just promise me one thing: you won't give up on yourself, no matter how hard things get. Clara nods, a tear slipping down her cheek as she makes a silent vow to honor that promise. As they leave the gallery together, the rain begins to ease, leaving behind a glistening sheen on the streets. Clara pauses outside, looking up at the sky as the clouds start to part. A single ray of sunlight breaks through, casting a golden glow over the city. For a moment, she allows herself to believe that brighter days might lie ahead. Not because of Ethan or Noah or anyone else, but because of the strength she's beginning to rediscover within herself. The camera lingers on her face, capturing the mix of pain and determination etched into her features. As the scene fades to black, the faint sound of birdsong emerges from the aftermath of the storm, a gentle reminder that even the darkest nights eventually give way to dawn. One evening, as she returns from one such walk, she notices an unfamiliar car parked outside her house. Her heart skips a beat as she approaches the front door, only to find Ethan standing there, his expression a mixture of desperation and guilt. "Clara," he says, stepping forward before she can retreat inside. "We need to talk." She freezes, her hand gripping the doorknob tightly. "I don't think there's anything left to say, Ethan." He shakes his head, his voice trembling. "Please, just give me 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." Clara hesitates, torn between anger and curiosity. Finally, she steps aside, allowing him to enter. They sit across from each other in the living room, the tension between them so thick it feels suffocating. "I know what I did was unforgivable," Ethan begins, his eyes filled with remorse. "But you have to believe me. I never wanted to hurt you. Or the baby." Clara crosses her arms protectively over her belly, her jaw tightening. "Then why did you, Ethan? Why did you lie to me for months? For years?" He looks down at his hands, unable to meet her gaze. "Because I was scared. Scared of losing everything we built together. Scared of failing you. And sleeping with someone else made that better?" Clara snaps, her voice rising despite her efforts to stay calm. "How could you even look at me after what you did?" Ethan flinches at her words, guilt etched into every line of his face. "It wasn't just about Isabelle. It was about me. I got lost somewhere along the way, Clara. But I swear, I never stopped loving you." Clara laughs bitterly, tears welling up in her eyes. "Love doesn't excuse this, Ethan. Love doesn't let you destroy someone's trust and call it a mistake." He reaches out toward her, but she pulls away sharply. "Don't touch me," she says, her voice cold and unyielding. "You've already taken enough from me." For a moment, they sit in silence, the weight of their fractured relationship pressing down on them. Ethan finally speaks, his voice barely above a whisper. "What happens now? Are you leaving me?" Clara takes a deep breath, steadying herself before answering. "Yes, I am, because staying would mean letting you keep hurting me, and I won't do that anymore." Ethan slumps back in his chair, defeat written across his face. "If that's what you want, then I'll leave. But please, don't shut me out completely. Let me be part of our child's life." Clara studies him carefully, searching for sincerity in his eyes. After a long pause, she nods slowly. "We'll figure something out for the baby's sake, but don't expect anything more than that." As Ethan stands to leave, he pauses at the doorway, turning back to look at her one last time. "I'm sorry, Clara. Truly." She doesn't respond, watching silently as he disappears into the night. Only when the sound of his car fades into the distance does she allow herself to break down, sinking onto the couch as sobs rack her body. The next day, Clara meets Noah for coffee at a small cafe overlooking the ocean. He notices immediately that something is different about her. Her posture is straighter, her eyes clearer, even though traces of sadness remain. "You saw him," Noah says knowingly, stirring his latte absent-mindedly. Clara nods, staring out at the horizon. "He came to apologize, to beg me to take him back. And," Noah prompts gently, "I told him it was over." Her voice is steady, but her hands tremble slightly around her mug. It felt final, like closing a chapter one should have ended months ago. Noah reaches across the table, placing a reassuring hand over hers. That must have been hard. It was, she admits, her voice cracking slightly, but it also felt right. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm making decisions for myself. Not because I'm afraid of being alone, or because I owe him anything. Noah smiles faintly, pride shining in his eyes. You're stronger than you realize, Clara. Stronger than anyone gives you credit for. She manages a small smile, squeezing his hand briefly before pulling away. Thank you, Noah, for everything. I don't know where I'd be without your support. They sit in companionable silence for a while, the sounds of the cafe blending with the distant crash of waves. As Clara sips her tea, her phone buzzes in her pocket. She pulls it out, frowning at the unfamiliar number on the screen. Who is it? Noah asks curiously. I don't know, Clara replies, her brow furrowing as she opens the message. What she sees makes her blood run cold. An anonymous text containing several photos of Ethan and Isabelle together in Paris. One image shows them kissing passionately outside a hotel. Another captures Isabelle resting her head on Ethan's shoulder as they stroll through Montmartre. Her hands begin to shake uncontrollably as she scrolls through the images, her heart pounding in her chest. Noah notices immediately, leaning closer to see what's upsetting her. What is it? He asks, his voice laced with concern. Clara hands him the phone, unable to speak. Tears stream down her face as Noah studies the photos, his expression darkening with anger. This is harassment, he mutters, scrolling through the messages. Whoever sent these is trying to manipulate you. Clara shakes her head, choking back a sob. Why are they doing this? Haven't I been through enough? Noah wraps an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. This isn't about you, Clara. It's about them, Ethan, Isabelle, whoever sent these. Don't let them win. You're stronger than their games. She buries her face in her hands, overwhelmed by the flood of emotions crashing over her. Betrayal, anger, fear. They swirl, together like a violent storm, threatening to pull her under. But amidst the chaos, a spark of determination begins to burn within her. No, she whispers fiercely, lifting her head to meet Noah's gaze. They don't get to break me. Not anymore. Noah nods approvingly, his voice firm. Good, because you deserve better than this, Clara. Better than him. Better than any of them. Later that night, Clara sits alone in her bedroom, staring at the photos on her phone. Each image feels like a knife twisting deeper into her heart, yet she forces herself to confront them, to acknowledge the truth of what Ethan has done. As she scrolls through the messages, she notices something tucked among the photos. A brief note from the sender. He doesn't love you. Wake up before it's too late. Her breath catches in her throat, the words cutting deeper than she expects. For a moment, doubt creeps in. What if they're right? What if Ethan truly never loved her at all? But then she remembers Noah's words, Maria's reassurances, the strength she's begun to rediscover within herself. She deletes the messages one by one, her resolve hardening with each tap of the screen. By the time she sets her phone aside, the storm inside her has calmed, if only slightly. She climbs into bed, placing a protective hand on her belly as she whispers softly to the baby growing inside her. We're going to be okay, she murmurs, her voice trembling but resolute. No matter what happens, we'll get through this together. Outside, the rain begins to fall again, washing away the remnants of the day. The camera pans out, capturing the vastness of the ocean stretching beyond the horizon. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbles, a promise of storms yet to come, but also of cleansing rains that will pave the way for brighter days ahead. Clara wakes to the sound of water drumming against her bedroom window, a rhythmic reminder of the storm both outside and within her. She lies in bed for a moment, staring at the ceiling as fragments of last night's revelation replay in her mind. The photos, the anonymous message, the raw ache of betrayal. She forces herself out of bed, wrapping a soft robe around her as she pads downstairs to make tea. The house feels quieter than usual, almost oppressive, as if the walls themselves are holding their breath. Her phone sits on the kitchen counter, its screen dark but taunting all the same. She knows she should delete the messages entirely, erase every trace of them, but something stops her. Instead, she picks up the phone, scrolling through the photos one more time. Each image is like a wound reopening. Ethan laughing with Isabelle, his arm draped casually over her shoulder. Isabelle gazing up at him with an expression Clara once thought was reserved only for her. It's not just the act of infidelity that hurts. It's the ease with which Ethan slipped into another life, another love. Her hands tremble as she sets the phone down, tears spilling over before she can stop them. She tries to focus on brewing her tea, but her thoughts spiral uncontrollably. How could he? She wonders again, the question burning brighter with each passing second. And worse still, what does this mean for her? For the baby? Later that afternoon, Ethan calls. Clara sees his name flash across her phone screen and hesitates, her thumb hovering over the answer button. Part of her wants to ignore it, to silence him completely, but curiosity, and perhaps some lingering hope, compels her to swipe. Clara, Ethan says immediately, his voice strained but urgent. Did you get something? A message? Photos? Her stomach churns at the desperation in his tone. Yes, she replies flatly, refusing to give him any satisfaction. Someone sent me pictures of you and her. There's a long pause on the other end, followed by a sharp intake of breath. Listen, I don't know who sent those, but save it, Ethan. She cuts him off sharply, her voice trembling with barely contained rage. I'm done listening to your excuses. Done letting you manipulate me. Whatever game you're playing, whoever you're trying to protect, it ends now. It's not a game, he snaps, his frustration breaking through. Isabelle is threatening to expose everything if I don't leave you. She thinks she can blackmail me into choosing her. Clara freezes, stunned by his admission. So it's true then, she whispers, her voice hollow. You were planning to leave me for her. No, Ethan insists, panic creeping into his voice. That's not what I meant. I never wanted to hurt you, Clara. But things got complicated. Complicated? She repeats incredulously, her anger rising like a tidal wave. You think sleeping with someone else while your wife is pregnant makes things complicated? Do you even hear yourself right now? He stammers, unable to form a coherent response. Finally, he pleads, Please, Clara, just let me explain. Let me fix this. There's nothing left to fix, she says coldly, her resolve unshakable. We're done, Ethan. You made your choice when you lied to me, when you chose her over us. Now live with it. Before he can respond, she ends the call, her hand shaking as she presses the red button. Tears stream down her face, but they're no longer tears of sadness. They're tears of fury, of liberation. For the first time, she feels truly free from him, from the toxic web of lies he spun around her. That evening, Clara meets Noah at a quiet park overlooking the ocean. He notices immediately that something has shifted within her. Her posture is straighter, her eyes clearer, though they still carry traces of pain. You talk to him, Noah says softly, sitting beside her on a bench dampened by the earlier rain. She nods, pulling her coat tighter around her against the chill. He admitted everything, about Isabelle, about the blackmail. He tried to justify it, but she trails off, shaking her head. It doesn't matter anymore. None of it matters. Noah studies her carefully, his expression, filled with concern yet tinged with admiration. What changed? I did, she replies simply, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. I realized I don't owe him anything. Not my forgiveness, not my trust, not even my anger. What he did, it's not about me. It's about him, his choices, his mistakes. Noah smiles faintly, pride shining in his eyes. You're stronger than you realize, Clara. Stronger than anyone gives you credit for, including yourself. She manages a small smile, leaning back against the bench as she watches the waves crash against the rocks below. It's strange, she admits after a moment. For so long, I thought my worth was tied to him, to our marriage. But now I see how wrong I was. Noah nods, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Sometimes we need storms to remind us of our own strength, to show us what we're capable of surviving. Clara turns to look at him, her heart swelling with gratitude, and something else she can't quite name. There's comfort in his presence, in the way he listens without judgment, in the unwavering support he offers. For the first time in months, she allows herself to imagine a future where happiness isn't tied to Ethan. A future where she might find joy again, even if it looks nothing like what she planned. "Thank you," she murmurs, her voice thick with emotion, "for being here, for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself." Noah reaches out, placing a gentle hand over hers. "Always, no matter what happens next, remember, you're not alone." As they sit together in silence, the sun begins to set, casting the sky in hues of pink and gold. The storm clouds that had loomed overhead all day begin to dissipate, revealing glimpses of light beneath the darkness. Clara takes a deep breath, feeling the weight of everything she's endured lifting slightly, as if the universe itself is reminding her that brighter days lie ahead. But even as hope flickers to life within her, a shadow lingers at the edges of her mind. Isabelle is still out there waiting to strike. And Ethan, will he really accept her decision? Or will he fight to win her back? The camera pans out, capturing the vastness of the ocean stretching beyond the horizon. The waves crash relentlessly against the shore, echoing the turbulence within Clara's heart. Whatever happens next, one thing is certain. She's ready to face it on her terms. She oscillates between moments of clarity and overwhelming doubt, the weight of her decisions pressing down on her like the California sun at its peak. Yet amidst the chaos, one constant remains: Noah. His presence has become a lifeline, a steady hand guiding her through the storm. One evening, as the sky turns a deep shade of indigo, Clara sits alone in her living room, staring at the stack of legal documents spread across the coffee table. Divorce papers. The words seem foreign, surreal, as if they belong to someone else's life. Her fingers tremble as she picks up a pen, hesitating before signing her name. Before she can make a decision, there's a soft knock at the door. She sets the pen down, her heart skipping a beat. When she opens the door, she finds Noah standing there, holding 2 cups of steaming tea. "I thought you might need this," he says gently, offering her a small smile. "And maybe some company." Clara steps aside, allowing him to enter. As he sets the tea on the table, his eyes fall on the divorce papers. He doesn't say anything immediately, but his expression softens with understanding. "You don't have to do this alone," he says finally, sitting beside her. "But I also won't push you. Whatever you decide, it's your choice." She exhales sharply, running a hand through her hair. "I know it's the right thing to do, but every time I look at those papers, I feel like I'm giving up on something I fought so hard for." Noah nods thoughtfully, his gaze steady. "It's not giving up, Clara. It's letting go of something that was never truly yours anymore. You're choosing yourself and your baby over a relationship that stopped being healthy a long time ago." Her eyes fill with tears, though she tries to blink them away. "What if I'm making a mistake? What if I regret this later?" He reaches out, placing a reassuring hand over hers. "Regret comes from staying in situations that hurt us, not from leaving them. Trust me, you'll never regret taking control of your life." For a moment, they sit in silence, the only sound the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. Finally, Clara takes a deep breath, picking up the pen once more. With a shaky hand, she signs her name on the dotted line. A tear slips down her cheek as she sets the pen aside, the finality of the act settling over her like a heavy blanket. "Thank you," she whispers, her voice trembling, "for helping me see this through." Noah squeezes her hand lightly, his smile warm yet tinged with sadness. "You didn't need my help, Clara. You found the strength within yourself. I just reminded you where to look." Later that night, after Noah leaves, Clara lies awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. The house feels emptier than ever, the absence of Ethan's presence now permanent rather than temporary. She places a protective hand on her belly, whispering softly to the baby growing inside her. "It's just us now," she murmurs, her voice breaking slightly. "But we're going to be okay. I promise." As she drifts into a restless sleep, her dreams are filled with fragments of memories. Ethan laughing with her on their wedding day, Isabelle's piercing green eyes glaring at her, Noah's comforting hand on hers. Each image blends together, creating a kaleidoscope of pain and hope. The next morning, Clara wakes to the sound of her phone buzzing insistently on the nightstand. She groans, reaching for it reluctantly. The caller ID reads unknown number, and her stomach churns as she answers. "Hello?" she says cautiously, her voice wary. "Mrs. Park." A smooth, accented voice purrs on the other end. Or should I say, soon-to-be former Mrs. Park. Clara freezes, her blood running cold. There's no mistaking the voice, it's Isabelle. "How did you get this number?" Clara demands, her tone sharp despite the fear bubbling beneath the surface. Isabelle chuckles softly, the sound sending chills down Clara's spine. "Oh, darling, I have my ways. Let's just say I've been keeping tabs on you and Ethan." "What do you want?" Clara snaps, gripping the phone tightly as if preparing for battle. "I want what's rightfully mine," Isabelle replies coolly, her confidence unshakable. "Ethan promised me a future, a family. And now, thanks to you, he's backing out." Clara's jaw tightens, anger flaring within her. "He made his choice when he lied to me. Don't try to pin this on me." "Oh, but it is your fault," Isabelle counters, her voice dripping with venom. "If you hadn't forced his hand, if you hadn't filed for divorce, we could have avoided all this drama. But since you've decided to play the victim..." She trails off, letting the threat linger in the air. Clara swallows hard, forcing herself to stay calm. "Whatever game you're playing, Isabelle, it won't work. Ethan chose me once, and now he's chosen freedom. From both of us. Accept it." There's a long pause on the other end, followed by a low, dangerous laugh. "We'll see about that, won't we?" The call ends abruptly, leaving Clara staring at her phone in stunned silence. Her hands tremble as she sets it down, her mind racing with possibilities. What is Isabelle planning? How far will she go to destroy what little piece Clara has left? That afternoon, Clara meets Maria at a quiet cafe near the beach. She debates whether to tell her about the call, but decides against it. Maria has already done so much for her. Instead, she focuses on discussing practical matters. Finding a new place to live, setting up a trust fund for the baby, preparing for the inevitable media attention once news of the divorce breaks. "You're handling this remarkably well," Maria says admiringly, sipping her coffee. "Most people would crumble under this kind of pressure." Clara shakes her head, managing a small smile. "I've had good teachers, and besides, I don't have the luxury of falling apart. Not with everything at stake." Maria nods approvingly, her eyes shining with pride. "You're stronger than you give yourself credit for, Mrs. Park. Remember that." As they talk, Clara notices someone watching her from across the cafe. At first, she dismisses it as paranoia, but the longer she looks, the more certain she becomes. It's a man, dressed in a dark suit, scribbling notes in a leather-bound notebook. When he catches her staring, he quickly looks away, pretending to be engrossed in his work. Her heart pounds as she turns back to Maria, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you think anyone's following me?" Maria frowns, glancing around the cafe. "Why would you ask that?" Clara hesitates, debating how much to reveal. Finally, she sighs, leaning closer. "I got a call this morning, from Isabelle." Maria's eyes widen in shock. "What did she say?" "She threatened me," Clara admits, her voice trembling. "Said she wouldn't let me ruin her plans with Ethan, that she'd fight for him, even if it meant dragging me through the mud." Maria's expression hardens, her protective instincts kicking in. "You can't let her intimidate you, Mrs. Park. If she tries anything, we'll handle it together. You're not alone in this." Clara nods, grateful for Maria's unwavering support. But as they leave the cafe, she can't shake the feeling that Isabelle's threats are just the beginning. The man in the suit lingers in her peripheral vision, his presence unsettling even from a distance. That night, as Clara climbs into bed, she pulls out her phone one last time. She scrolls through her contacts until she finds Noah's name, hesitating before tapping the call button. "Hey," he answers, his voice warm and reassuring. "Everything okay?" She bites her lip, fighting back tears. "Noah, I'm scared. What if she doesn't stop? What if she hurts me? Or worse, the baby?" There's a long pause on the other end, followed by a soft sigh. "Listen to me, Clara. No one is going to hurt you, not while I'm here. We'll figure this out together, step by step. Okay?" She closes her eyes, drawing strength from his words. "Okay." The line goes silent for a moment, save for the sound of their breathing. Finally, Noah speaks again, his tone gentle yet firm. "You're not alone in this, Clara. No matter what happens next, remember that." As she hangs up, Clara places a hand on her belly, whispering softly to the life growing inside her. "We're going to be okay," she promises, her voice steadier than before. "No matter what Isabelle does, we'll face it together." The camera pans out, capturing the vastness of the ocean stretching beyond her bedroom window. The waves crash relentlessly against the shore, echoing the turbulence within Clara's heart. Whatever storms lie ahead, one thing is certain. She's ready to weather them, all for the sake of the tiny life depending on her. Clara wakes to find her phone buzzing incessantly on the nightstand, a series of urgent messages from Ethan flooding her screen. Her stomach churns as she reads them. "Clara, you need to call me immediately. Isabelle's losing control. She's threatening to go public with everything. Please, we have to fix this before it gets worse." Her hands tremble as she sets the phone aside, unwilling to engage with him. Whatever chaos Isabelle is stirring now, it's his mess, not hers. Yet deep down, a kernel of fear begins to grow. What does Isabelle plan to expose? And how far will she go to destroy Clara? Later that day, Clara meets Noah at a secluded park overlooking the ocean. The wind carries the salty tang of the sea, but even the natural beauty around them can't ease the tension radiating off her. "You look like you haven't slept," Noah observes gently, his brow furrowing with concern. "I haven't," Clara admits, her voice barely above a whisper. "Ethan keeps texting me, warning me about Isabelle. Says she's planning something big." Noah's expression darkens. "What do you think she's up to?" Clara shakes her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "I don't know, but I feel like no matter what I do, she's always one step ahead. Like she's waiting for me to make a mistake so she can pounce." Noah reaches out, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "Then don't give her the satisfaction. Stay strong, Clara. Don't let her win." She nods, though doubt clouds her features. "It's not just her, Noah. It's everything. My life feels like it's falling apart piece by piece. The divorce, the threats, the baby. I don't know if I can handle all of this." "Yes, you can," he insists firmly, his voice unwavering. "Because you're not doing this alone. You've got Maria, you've got me, and most importantly, you've got yourself. That's more than enough." His words strike a chord within her, reigniting a flicker of determination. She takes a deep breath, forcing herself to focus. "Okay, so what do I do next?" "We prepare," Noah replies, his tone resolute. "We gather evidence against Isabelle. If she tries anything, we'll be ready. And we protect you and the baby, no matter what." Clara exhales shakily, nodding slowly. "All right, let's do it." Meanwhile, across town, Ethan sits in his office, surrounded by stacks of papers and empty coffee cups. His once immaculate desk is cluttered with legal documents, financial reports, and scribbled notes detailing his crumbling empire. For weeks, he's been battling not only the fallout from his affair, but also mounting pressure from his business partner, Daniel, who has grown increasingly suspicious of Ethan's erratic behavior. "Ethan, we need to talk," Daniel says sharply, storming into the office without knocking. He slams a folder onto the desk, his expression grim. "These numbers don't add up. Where's the money going?" Ethan rubs his temples, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. "I don't know, Daniel. I swear. I'm trying to sort it out. Daniel crosses his arms, his skepticism palpable. Trying isn't good enough. Clients are pulling out left and right, investors are demanding answers, and your personal scandals aren't helping. If things don't improve soon, we're done for. Ethan clenches his fists, frustration boiling over. Do you think I don't know that? Do you think I'm not doing everything I can to fix this? Well, clearly you're not. Daniel snaps, his voice rising. You're distracted, reckless, and frankly, unreliable. If you can't get your act together, maybe it's time for someone else to take the reins. The threat hangs in the air, sharp and cutting. Ethan stares at him, stunned into silence. For years, he prided himself on being untouchable, the man who had it all. But now, his carefully constructed facade is crumbling, brick by brick. After Daniel storms out, Ethan sinks into his chair, burying his face in his hands. His mind races with everything that's gone wrong. Clara leaving him, Isabelle's threats, his failing company. Each failure feels heavier than the last, until he can barely breathe under the weight of it all. His phone buzzes on the desk, snapping him out of his spiraling thoughts. It's another message from Isabelle. If you won't come back to me, I'll make sure neither of us gets what we want. Starting with your precious little family. Ethan's blood runs cold. He knows exactly what she's capable of, and the thought terrifies him. That evening, Clara receives an anonymous package at her doorstep. Her heart pounds as she opens it, revealing a thick envelope filled with photos and documents. Among them are bank statements showing large transfers between Ethan's accounts and Isabelle's, emails detailing their plans to relocate to Europe after the baby's birth, and surveillance images of Clara entering Noah's apartment. Her hands shake violently as she sifts through the contents, nausea rising in her throat. This isn't just blackmail. It's a calculated attack designed to destroy her completely. Maria finds her sitting on the floor, surrounded by the damning evidence, tears streaming down her face. Mrs. Park, what is all this? She asks, kneeling beside her. It's everything, Clara chokes out, clutching the papers tightly. Proof of Ethan's lies, Isabelle's schemes, everything they've done to ruin my life. Maria wraps an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. Then use it. Take this proof and fight back. Don't let them win. Clara nods, though fear grips her heart. But what if it's not enough? What if she comes after the baby? She won't, Maria says firmly, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. We'll protect you both, no matter what it takes. Later that night, Clara calls Noah, her voice trembling as she explains the contents of the package. She's trying to break me, Noah, to make me look guilty, unstable, like I'm the problem. Noah listens intently, his jaw tightening with anger. Then we turn the tables. We expose her for who she really is. A manipulative liar who'll stop at nothing to get what she wants. But how? Clara asks, her voice breaking. How do I fight someone like her? You don't fight her alone, he replies firmly. We'll go to the authorities, leak the evidence to the press if we have to, whatever it takes to stop her. Clara hesitates, staring at the photos spread across her kitchen table. Finally, she nods, resolve hardening in her eyes. All right, let's do it. As she hangs up, she places a protective hand on her belly, whispering softly to the baby growing inside her. We're going to be okay, she murmurs, her voice steady despite the storm raging within her. No matter what happens next, we'll face it together. The camera pans out, capturing the vastness of the ocean stretching beyond her window. The waves crash relentlessly against the shore, echoing the turbulence within Clara's heart. Whatever battles lie ahead, one thing is certain. She's ready to fight, for herself, for her child, and for the future she deserves. Last night's decision to expose Isabelle and fight back has ignited a fire within her, a determination to reclaim not only her life but also her dignity. She dresses quickly, pulling on a simple yet elegant outfit that makes her feel strong and capable. Today isn't about fear, it's about taking control. As she steps outside, the California sun casts golden light over the estate, momentarily blinding her. For a split second, she pauses, letting the warmth seep into her skin. It's almost as if the universe is reminding her, "You are still standing, and you will keep standing." Her phone buzzes impatiently in her hand. It's Ethan again. Reluctantly, she answers, her voice clipped and unyielding. "What do you want?" "Clara, please." Ethan pleads, his tone desperate. "You don't understand what you're dealing with, Isabelle. She's dangerous." Clara scoffs bitterly, rolling her eyes even though he can't see her. "Dangerous? That's rich coming from you. You're the one who brought her into our lives." "I didn't mean for any of this to happen." Ethan snaps, his frustration spilling over. "But now she's threatening to ruin everything. My company, my reputation, everything. If you go public with those documents, she'll destroy us both." "Us?" Clara repeats incredulously, her voice rising. "There is no us, Ethan. Not anymore. You made sure of that when you lied to me, when you chose her over me. Whatever happens next, it's on you." Ethan exhales sharply, his guilt evident in the silence that follows. Finally, he speaks, his voice quieter, more vulnerable. "I'm sorry, Clara. I never meant to hurt you, or the baby. Please, just let me fix this." Clara closes her eyes, fighting back tears. His apologies used to weaken her resolve, but not anymore. "No, Ethan, this isn't something you can fix. Some things are broken beyond repair." Before he can respond, she ends the call, her hands trembling slightly as she sets the phone aside. The weight of finality settles over her, heavy but liberating. She knows what she must do, and she won't let anyone stop her. Later that afternoon, Clara meets Noah at a quiet cafe tucked away in Malibu. They sit in a secluded corner, the hum of conversation around them fading into the background as they focus on the task at hand. "This is everything?" Noah asks, gesturing to the folder filled with evidence Clara brought with her. She nods, pushing the documents toward him. Bank statements, emails, photos, proof of their affair. Their plans to leave together after the baby was born. Everything. Noah flips through the pages, his expression growing darker with each revelation. "This is enough to ruin them both," he says finally, his voice low and deliberate. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Clara hesitates, her fingers tracing the edge of the table nervously. "If I don't do this now, they'll keep coming after me. After the baby. I can't live like that, Noah. Always looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next attack." He reaches out, placing a reassuring hand over hers. "Then we move forward. But we need to be smart about this. We'll take the evidence to the authorities first, then decide how much to release to the press. Timing is everything." She exhales shakily, nodding slowly. "Okay, let's do it." That evening, Clara and Noah meet with Detective Martinez, a seasoned investigator known for handling high-profile cases. The dimly lit conference room feels suffocating, the air thick with tension as Clara lays out the contents of the folder. These documents prove that Ethan Park and Isabelle Duval were involved in an extramarital affair while I was pregnant, Clara explains, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. They also show that Isabelle has been blackmailing Ethan, using threats to manipulate him into leaving me. Detective Martinez studies the evidence carefully, her sharp eyes scanning each document. After a long pause, she looks up at Clara, her expression unreadable. "This is serious stuff. If these allegations are true, there could be legal ramifications for both parties." "They're true," Clara insists firmly, her resolve unwavering, "and I'm willing to testify to that." Martinez nods thoughtfully, jotting down notes before closing the folder. "All right, we'll launch an investigation immediately. In the meantime, stay safe. People like Isabelle don't take kindly to being exposed." As they leave the station, Clara feels a mix of relief and apprehension. The wheels are in motion now, and there's no turning back. Yet even as hope flickers to life within her, a shadow lingers at the edges of her mind. What will Isabelle do when she finds out? The next day, Clara receives another anonymous message. This time, a single photo. It's a surveillance image of her walking into Noah's apartment, accompanied by a chilling caption, "Careful who you trust, darling. Secrets have a way of coming out." Her heart pounds as she stares at the screen, fear clawing at her chest. How did Isabelle get this? Who else is watching her? Before she can spiral into panic, Maria enters the room, carrying a tray of tea. Seeing the look on Clara's face, she sets the tray down immediately. "What's wrong?" Clara shows her the message, her hands shaking. "She's everywhere, Maria. Watching me, threatening me. I don't know how to stop her." Maria takes the phone, studying the image closely. Her jaw tightens with anger. This isn't just about Ethan anymore. She's trying to isolate you, make you doubt everyone, including Noah. "But why?" Clara whispers, tears welling up in her eyes. "Why does she hate me so much?" "It's not about you," Maria replies firmly, handing the phone back. "It's about power, control. She sees you as a threat because you're stronger than she expected." Clara nods slowly, drawing strength from Maria's words. "Then I won't let her win. No matter what she throws at me, I'll stand my ground." That night, Clara calls Noah, her voice trembling as she explains the latest threat. "She's trying to turn me against you," she admits, her fear palpable. "To make me think you're part of her plan." Noah's voice softens, his concern evident. "Clara, listen to me. You can trust me. Whatever Isabelle says, whatever she tries to do, it's all manipulation. Don't let her plant seeds of doubt in your mind." "I know," Clara replies, though uncertainty lingers in her tone. "But what if she's right? What if trusting you makes me vulnerable?" "Trusting someone doesn't make you weak," Noah counters gently. "It makes you human, and you deserve to lean on people who care about you, who want to help you." For a moment, they sit in silence, the weight of their shared fears pressing down on them. Finally, Clara exhales shakily, forcing herself to focus. "All right, I trust you, but promise me one thing: you'll tell me if anything changes. If you find out anything I should know." "I promise," Noah replies firmly, his voice unwavering. "No secrets, not between us." As she hangs up, Clara places a protective hand on her belly, whispering softly to the baby growing inside her. "We're going to be okay," she murmurs, her voice steadier than before. "No matter what Isabelle does, we'll face it together." The camera pans out, capturing the vastness of the ocean stretching beyond her bedroom window. The waves crash relentlessly against the shore, echoing the turbulence within Clara's heart. Whatever storms lie ahead, one thing is certain: she's ready to weather them, all for the sake of the tiny life depending on her. The days that follow Clara's decision to expose Isabelle and Ethan's betrayal are a whirlwind of tension and dread. Every shadow seems darker, every sound sharper, as if the world itself is holding its breath in anticipation of what's to come. Clara tries to focus on practical matters, packing boxes, organizing documents, preparing for the inevitable media storm. But her mind keeps drifting back to the anonymous messages and surveillance photos. Isabelle is out there watching, waiting, and Clara knows it's only a matter of time before she strikes again. One evening, as Clara sits alone in her dimly lit living room, her phone buzzes insistently on the coffee table. She hesitates before picking it up, bracing herself for another threat. But when she sees the caller ID, her heart sinks. Not because it's Isabelle, but because it's Ethan. "What do you want?" she answers coldly, her voice laced with exhaustion. "Clara, please." Ethan pleads, his tone desperate. "You need to stop this. Whatever you're planning, it's going to destroy everything." "Everything?" she repeats incredulously, her anger flaring despite her best efforts to stay calm. "My marriage was already destroyed, Ethan. By you. By your lies, your betrayal. Don't act like you care now." "I do care," he snaps, his frustration breaking through. "About you, about the baby, about us. But Isabelle, she's not just some jealous mistress. She's dangerous, Clara. If you go after her, she'll retaliate. And I'm scared of what she might do." Clara exhales sharply, rubbing her temples as if trying to ward off an impending headache. So what am I supposed to do? Just let her win? Let her keep threatening me, manipulating me, ruining my life? No, Ethan says quickly, his voice softening. I don't want you to get hurt. Or the baby. Her jaw tightens at the mention of their child. Too late for that, Ethan. She's already hurting us. Every message, every photo, it's all designed to break me, to make me doubt myself, to make me afraid. But I won't give her the satisfaction. There's a long pause on the other end, followed by a heavy sigh. Then let me handle it. Ethan insists, his voice trembling slightly. Let me talk to her, try to reason with her. Maybe I can make her back down. Clara laughs bitterly, shaking her head even though he can't see her. You think she'll listen to you? After everything you've done? No, Ethan. This isn't your fight anymore. It's mine. Before he can respond, she ends the call, her hands shaking as she sets the phone aside. The weight of finality settles over her once more, heavy, suffocating, yet strangely liberating. Whatever happens next, she'll face it alone if she has to. Later that night, Clara receives another message, this time from Isabelle herself. The text is brief but chilling. You think you're so clever, don't you? Exposing secrets, playing the victim. But here's one secret you haven't uncovered yet. I'm pregnant. Clara's blood runs cold as she stares at the screen, her heart pounding in her chest. Pregnant? With Ethan's child? Her knees buckle beneath her, and she collapses onto the couch, tears streaming down her face. How could this happen? How could Ethan have been so reckless, so selfish? Her phone buzzes again, a follow-up message from Isabelle. Now tell me, darling, how does it feel to know your husband chose someone else? Not just once, but twice. Clara clutches the phone tightly, her knuckles white with fury. For a moment, she considers calling Ethan, demanding answers, screaming until her voice gives out. But then she stops herself. What would be the point? His betrayal is clear. His choices are irrevocable. Knowing the details won't change anything. It will only deepen the wound. Instead, she calls Noah, her voice trembling as she explains the message. She's pregnant. Clara whispers, her voice breaking, with Ethan's baby. Noah listens intently, his jaw tightening with anger. This changes nothing, Clara. If anything, it proves how far they've gone, together. You're better off without him. Without both of them. But what about the baby? Clara asks, her voice cracking. What kind of life is that child going to have with parents like them? That's not your problem. Noah replies firmly, his tone unwavering. Your job is to protect yourself and your baby. Focus on that. Everything else will fall into place. Clara nods, though doubt clouds her features. I feel like I'm drowning, Noah. Like no matter what I do, I can't escape this nightmare. You're stronger than you realize, he reassures her, his voice soft but resolute. And you're not alone. We'll get through this together. The next morning, Clara wakes to find Maria waiting for her in the kitchen, concern etched across her face. Mrs. Park, are you all right? You look pale. Clara shakes her head, tears welling up in her eyes. Isabelle's pregnant, Maria, with Ethan's baby. Maria freezes, shock registering in her expression. Oh my God. I don't know what to do, Clara admits, her voice barely above a whisper. How am I supposed to raise my child knowing that Ethan has another family waiting for him? That he chose her. Not just once, but twice. Maria wraps an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. You focus on your baby, Mrs. Park, on giving that child the love and stability it deserves. Ethan's choices, they don't define you. They don't define your worth as a mother. Clara leans into Maria's embrace, drawing strength from her words. But what if I can't do it? What if I'm not strong enough? You are, Maria insists firmly, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. Because you have no other choice. Your baby needs you, and so does this world. Later that afternoon, Clara meets with Detective Martinez to update her on the latest development. The investigator listens carefully, her sharp eyes narrowing as Clara explains Isabelle's pregnancy. This complicates things, Martinez admits, jotting down notes. If Isabelle files for paternity rights or tries to involve Ethan legally, it could drag you into a custody battle, or worse. Clara nods, her stomach churning at the thought. What should I do? For now, stay focused on the investigation. Martinez advises, her tone firm. We'll use the evidence you provided to build a case against both Ethan and Isabelle. In the meantime, document everything, every message, every interaction. Anything that could help us anticipate their next move. As they leave the station, Clara feels a mix of determination and despair. The road ahead is fraught with challenges, but she knows one thing for certain. She won't let Isabelle or Ethan dictate her future. That evening, Clara stands on the balcony overlooking the ocean, the cool breeze brushing against her skin. She places a protective hand on her belly, whispering softly to the baby growing inside her. It's just us now, she murmurs, her voice trembling but resolute. Just you and me, and we're going to be okay. No matter what happens next, we'll face it together. The camera pans out, capturing the vastness of the ocean stretching beyond the horizon. The waves crash relentlessly against the shore, echoing the turbulence within Clara's heart. Whatever storms lie ahead, one thing is certain. She's ready to weather them, all for the sake of the tiny life depending on her. Weeks pass in a blur of legal proceedings, sleepless nights, and mounting pressure. Clara's life has become a delicate balancing act, protecting her unborn child while navigating the fallout from Ethan and Isabelle's betrayal. The investigation into their affairs is ongoing, but every day brings new challenges, new revelations that test her strength to its limits. One evening, as the sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows across her living room, Clara sits alone on the couch, staring at the stack of documents Detective Martinez gave her earlier that day. They contain updates on the case. Bank records confirming Ethan's financial entanglements with Isabelle, surveillance footage showing clandestine meetings, and most devastatingly, a signed agreement between them outlining plans to relocate to Europe after the baby's birth. Her hands tremble as she flips through the pages, each detail a fresh wound reopening scars she thought were beginning to heal. She feels the weight of it all pressing down on her. Ethan's lies, Isabelle's manipulation, the looming reality of raising a child without the man she once loved. Tears stream silently down her cheeks as she clutches the papers tightly, her knuckles white with anger and grief. Before she can spiral further into despair, there's a soft knock at the door. She wipes her tears hastily, composing herself before opening it to find Noah standing there, his expression filled with concern. "Hey," he says gently, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "I was worried about you." Clara forces a small smile, though her red-rimmed eyes betray her pain. "I'm fine, just processing everything." Noah studies her carefully, his gaze soft yet probing. "You don't have to pretend with me, Clara. Not anymore." She exhales sharply, sinking back onto the couch as he takes a seat beside her. For a moment, they sit in silence, the only sound the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. Finally, Clara speaks, her voice trembling with emotion. "She's pregnant, Noah," she whispers, clutching the edge of the blanket draped over her lap. "With his baby. How am I supposed to move on knowing that part of him will always belong to her?" Noah reaches out, placing a reassuring hand over hers. "Because you're stronger than this, Clara. Stronger than both of them. What they did, it doesn't define you. It doesn't diminish your worth as a mother or as a person." "But what kind of future does my child have?" she asks, her voice breaking. "Growing up knowing their father chose someone else? Knowing they'll never truly be enough for him? They don't need him," Noah replies firmly, his tone unwavering. "They have you, and that's more than enough. You're going to give that baby everything Ethan could never provide. Love, stability, honesty. That's what matters." Clara nods slowly, drawing strength from his words. Yet even as resolve begins to harden within her, doubt lingers at the edges of her mind. "What if I fail? What if I'm not enough?" "You won't fail," Noah insists, his voice soft but resolute. Because you're willing to fight for yourself, for your baby. That's what makes you extraordinary. The next morning, Clara wakes with a renewed sense of purpose. She dresses quickly, pulling on a flowing dress that makes her feel strong and capable despite the heaviness in her heart. Today isn't about fear. It's about taking control of her future and her child's. As she steps outside, the California air feels crisp and invigorating, carrying with it the promise of new beginnings. She climbs into her car and drives to a nearby art gallery, a place she hasn't visited since before the chaos began. The familiar scent of oil paints and polished wood envelopes her as she enters, grounding her in a way nothing else has recently. She wanders through the aisles, pausing in front of a painting that catches her eye. A swirling abstract piece dominated by shades of blue and gold. It reminds her of the ocean, of resilience, of hope amidst turmoil. As she studies it, she feels a flicker of inspiration, a reminder that beauty can emerge from pain. Beautiful, isn't it? A voice says behind her, startling her. She turns to see Noah standing there, his hands tucked into the pockets of his leather jacket. He smiles sheepishly, gesturing toward the painting. I saw your car outside and figured I'd come in to check on you. Clara shakes her head, managing a small smile. You really do have a knack for showing up when I least expect it. Noah steps closer, his expression thoughtful. Do you want to talk about it? About why you came here? She hesitates, tracing the edge of the painting frame with her fingers. I guess I needed to remember who I am, who I was before all of this happened. Before Ethan, before Isabelle, before everything fell apart. And who is that? Noah prompts gently. Clara takes a deep breath, her voice steady despite the storm raging within her. Someone who believed in love, in family, in second chances, but also someone who didn't settle for less than she deserved. Noah nods approvingly, pride shining in his eyes. That person is still in there, Clara. She just needs time to heal, to rediscover herself. I know, Clara replies softly, turning to face him fully. And maybe someday I'll be ready to let someone else in, to trust again. Noah smiles faintly, his gaze softening. When that day comes, I'll be here, whenever you're ready. For a moment, their eyes lock, unspoken emotions passing between them. Clara feels a warmth spreading through her chest, a glimmer of hope, of possibility. But then she looks away, focusing instead on the painting in front of her. Thank you, she murmurs, her voice thick with gratitude, for being here, for reminding me that I'm not alone. Noah squeezes her hand briefly before pulling away. Always. Later that afternoon, Clara returns home to find Maria waiting for her in the kitchen. The housekeeper greets her warmly, offering a cup of tea as they sit together at the counter. How are you holding up? Maria asks, her tone gentle yet probing. Clara shrugs, sipping her tea thoughtfully. Better, I think. Still scared, still angry, but also hopeful. For the first time in months, I feel like I'm starting to take control of my life again. Maria nods approvingly, her eyes shining with pride. That's all anyone can ask for, Mrs. Park. One step at a time. As they talk, Clara's phone buzzes on the table. She picks it up, frowning at the unfamiliar number on the screen. Her heart pounds as she opens the message. Enjoy your freedom while it lasts, darling, because soon enough, everyone will know the truth about you. Her hands begin to shake uncontrollably as she shows the message to Maria. It's her, Clara whispers, her voice trembling with fear. Isabelle. Maria's jaw tightens with anger, her protective instincts kicking in. Don't let her intimidate you, Mrs. Park. Whatever she's planning, we'll handle it together. Clara nods, though uncertainty clouds her features. But what if she's right? What if the truth ruins everything? The truth won't ruin you, Maria insists firmly, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. Because you've done nothing wrong. It's Ethan and Isabelle who should be ashamed, not you. Clara exhales shakily, drawing strength from Maria's words. All right, then I won't let her win. No matter what she tries to do, I'll stand my ground. That night, as Clara lies in bed, she places a protective hand on her belly, whispering softly to the baby growing inside her. "We're going to be okay," she murmurs, her voice steadier than before. "No matter what happens next, we'll face it together." The camera pans out, capturing the vastness of the ocean stretching beyond her bedroom window. The waves crash relentlessly against the shore, echoing the turbulence within Clara's heart. Whatever storms lie ahead, one thing is certain. She's ready to weather them, all for the sake of the tiny life depending on her. The next morning dawns gray and overcast, the sky heavy with clouds that mirror the tension in Clara's chest. She wakes early, her mind racing with thoughts of Isabelle's latest threat. What truth could she possibly expose? And how far would she go to destroy Clara's fragile sense of peace? As Clara prepares breakfast, her phone buzzes insistently on the counter. She hesitates before picking it up, bracing herself for another cryptic message or cruel taunt. Instead, the caller ID reads Detective Martinez. Her heart skips a beat as she answers. "Mrs. Park," Martinez says without preamble, her tone urgent. "We need to meet. Now." Clara's stomach churns. "What's wrong?" "I'll explain when I see you," Martinez replies sharply. "But trust me, you're going to want to hear this." 20 minutes later, Clara sits across from Detective Martinez in a dimly lit conference room at the police.